Welcome, trusted advisors. This is the podcast where we explore what it really takes to build, grow and sustain a thriving financial planning business. Every fortnight, you'll hear candid conversations with the leaders, innovators and trailblazers of our profession. People who have navigated the challenges, embraced the opportunities and are willing to share what they've learned along the way. If you're curious, ambitious and committed to raising the bar in advice, you're in the right place. There's a segment of the market that most financial planning firms know exists, know needs help, and quietly walk past anyway. Not because they don't care, but because the traditional model just doesn't fit them. The pricing doesn't work, the service design doesn't resonate, and the economics rarely stack up. So the advice profession has largely left a whole generation of Australians underserved. My guest today decided to do something about it. Rebecca Tai is a co-founder of Game Plan Wealth Advisors in Melbourne. She and her business partner Alicia started with a deceptively simple insight. If they, as financial planners, could benefit from someone objectively reviewing their own finances at this stage of life, how much more so would their peers? From that, they built a practice from scratch, designed entirely around the millennial client. In this episode, we go deep on what it actually takes to serve this cohort well. And it is not simply a younger version of what everyone else is already doing. Rebecca talks about building a 3-tiered service model, the role of project-based advice as a gateway to ongoing relationships, how she and Alicia have held firm on their boundaries around insurance and pension phase clients, and the Instagram strategy, built on a phone, a tissue box for a stand, and no production budget, that is generating thousands of views and turning strangers into clients. We also talk pricing, the psychological weight of starting a new business, what it means to be playing the infinite game, and why some of the most powerful thinking she brings to her clients was instilled long before she ever set foot in financial planning. And stay with us to the very end, because after I thought we'd wrapped up and said our goodbyes, Rebecca and I kept talking. There was more to share, so we hit record again. The second part of this episode covers some content we didn't get into in the main conversation, including the story behind a quote she's had on her bedroom wall since childhood, that honestly is one of the most powerful framings of what we do in this profession that I've heard. You don't want to miss it. So let's get the episode started. Welcome, Rebecca Tai, to the Trusted Advisor podcast.
Hi, thanks so much for having me, Rob.
It's great to have you on the show, Beck. We have known each other for a good number of years, but we haven't been in regular contact in recent years. And you've been up to some stuff since last time we chatted. You've been a bit busy. So I want to talk about that today because you're tackling a market that's very hard for advice firms to do well. I want to dig into that with you. But before we get there, let's talk about your career journey so far. You started your career in 2009. You've been building that in financial advice ever since. And at some point, you and your colleague, Alicia, looked at the clients you were serving and the clients you weren't and decided there was a whole cohort of people who genuinely needed advice but didn't fit the model. What was the gap and what was it about that gap that made you back yourselves to build a business around it?
Yeah, so I honestly didn't set out to start a business. It was something that kind of came over time as we were working in financial planning. Alicia and I noticed that we were getting to a life stage where we were making a lot of really big decisions that would impact our financial futures. So we kind of used each other as a sounding board for our own financial planning. And we thought if we as financial planners could benefit from someone objectively looking into our financial situation, how much more so would someone else who is not a financial planner in our similar life stage benefit from that? And so over time, that sort of feeling grew, and we were looking at the clients that we were serving, and it was clear that the current model couldn't quite service the people who really needed advice like us. So Alicia and I essentially created a business for ourselves. What is something that we felt we needed? How do we engage with professional services? And what is it that we would really like to see in a financial advice business for people like us? And anecdotally, a lot of our friends were asking for advice as well, and we knew we couldn't service them in our previous firm.
Yeah, it's such a great catalyst to start something new and thinking, well, if we're advisors ourselves and we're actually asking each other to sort of get our affairs in order, we know there's a whole cohort of people out there that, like us, that could really value this advice and would benefit from it. So well done on taking the plunge. There's a widely held view in the profession, and we're no different. It kind of prompted me to reach out to you because clients under 40 can be difficult to retain and they can be challenging to make economic. What's been your experience, and where do you think that perception doesn't really tell the full story?
I think that it's actually true in that it can be very hard to service them, but only in the context of the fact that you're trying to service them using the old model. The traditional advice firms, they generally tend to target those pre-retiree and retiree clients, and their needs are generally superannuation, retirement planning, tax strategies, which is all relevant, but it is based on that old model. Whereas if you're trying to target a whole new segment of clients with different characteristics, different cultural upbringing, different ways that they engage and absorb information, then I do think you need to start from a clean slate and create a service that is specifically tailored towards them. So what I mean by that is that if you have a advice firm that you already have your own target market and then you're trying to fit that segment into your target market, it's like trying to squeeze a square peg in a round hole. It just doesn't quite work. Whereas if you throw away those ideas and create something from scratch, then you can make it economic because your whole business is built around that service and you can scale it to service more clients.
Yeah. And it goes to how you attract them, how you service them. You're doing some really cool stuff we're going to get into in a second, which I'm really excited to hear more about. And I'm sure our listeners will be too, because you've been quite innovative. And others that are in this space are probably taking a similar approach to you. But yeah, I'm looking forward to talking a bit more about how you find those people and how they are attracted to you. But before we get there, you've got 3 service tiers you call foundations,
hmm
pathway to wealth, and countdown to retirement.
Yeah.
Can you talk us through those service offers and how do you determine where clients sit, or do they self-select?
Yeah, so those 3 tiers really reflect the fact that there's clients that are coming from all different stages of life and they're on a financial journey. So, at what part of the financial journey are they on? Now, most clients actually don't realize what stage of the financial journey they're on. So, we can identify it pretty quickly when we look at their situation and have a chat to them and their goals and needs. But broadly, a foundation client is designed for clients who are in that accumulation stage. They may not have a lot of assets yet, but they've got high potential. So they're high earning, they're kind of building their asset base. They're starting pretty early on in their financial journey. They might have just started a business or they're starting in their career and trying to accumulate and learn about these concepts for the first time. Pathway to wealth clients have a little bit more complexity. They might have some assets already, some structures in place, and it's really about maximizing what they have to achieve their goals. And countdown to retirement, that's pretty self-explanatory, but they're within 10 years of wanting to stop working or have the option to stop working. And there's very specific strategies that we apply to that cohort of clients.
And would it be fair to say this particular client type is very tech savvy and very open to virtual meetings, which actually expands your audience potential? So going from someone who can drive no more than 30 minutes to get to see you, are you picking up clients from all over because they're aware of your offer and they might be in other states and they really want to engage with someone who really is designing their business to serve their needs specifically?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. We definitely have clients where the distance doesn't really matter because we meet with them online, but there is still a level of home bias to our business as well. So we do get prospects who call us because they can see that we're local. Even if they don't ever meet us in person, they just know
Yeah.
that they're familiar with the fact that we're in Melbourne or somewhere close to where they live. So both yes and also no. But you're right in that this cohort of client millennials, they tend to be a lot more tech savvy. So it does change the way we engage with them in forms of the tools that we use and how we collect information, how we service them, how they continue to engage with us ongoing.
Okay. So in serving that younger audience, you made a really conscious decision to not take on the pension phase client, the more traditional client, as you described earlier.
Yeah.
What is it like to hold that boundary? Because I'm sure you still have people come to you that are in that phase of life and looking for advice. How do you think about what you're trading off to keep that service really tight to your target client?
Yeah, I think with any startup, it can be really tempting to just get that short-term cash flow going. But I think you start a high conviction business for a reason. You want to target a cohort of clients that aren't being taken care of. So holding that boundary does require discipline. But we're also playing the infinite game, right? So it's not a short-term thing that we're building. We're wanting to build a long-term, sustainable and scalable business. So holding that service offering tight means that we don't let these short-term decisions impact our long-term planning.
I love that reference. Do you read the book, The Infinite Game
I
by Simon
have,
Sinek?
Simon Sinek.
Yes. When you said that, I thought you've read that book too. Yeah, it's a great book.
Yeah, no, it is a great book, and it very much aligns with the way I think about business, is that if you're just building something for the short term, then it really does change the way you make decisions. And building something that is long lasting and infinite requires a lot of discipline in the short term to say no to the things that doesn't quite align with your vision. And that's sort of where it comes from when we say no to clients who are already in pension phase and there's not a lot of value that we can add based on our current service model. Then we just tell them that this is not typically the clients that we choose to service, and these are the reasons why. But we do partner with other financial planners who do target these clients, and that's where the strength of the professional network is really important.
I guess there'd be some reciprocal opportunity there too, wouldn't there? Because they'd
Definitely.
have younger people, approaching them as well that they can't properly service.
Exactly. Yeah.
When you said The Infinite Game, and it reminded me, you might be too young for this, Beck, but you remember Amazon back in the early 2000s was just burning so much cash and not making any money. And there was a lot of criticism and pressure on Jeff Bezos at the time. And not that I'm a fanboy on the Amazon story per se, but I remember it specifically about him saying, we're playing a long game here. And he's actually been kind of quoted now as saying long-term thinking is one of his core tenets. How he actually thinks about the business. It's always about thinking, how is it going to be in 50 years' time, not just in 5 years or 1 year cycles. And when you're a public company like they are, that must have been challenging early on with a lot of pressure they copped. But I do absolutely subscribe to that theory, is you build something with the end in mind, which is a very long horizon, not just your own short-term needs being met. So well done on sticking to your guns there. You mentioned that in the process of building the business, naturally pricing becomes something you're trying to figure out, and you're dealing with an audience of client that is not typical. So you've come from a different, more traditional approach.
Yeah.
You said it evolved quite a bit since you started the business to pricing. What was the process of getting that right? And what did you come to understand about your value along the way?
I think it definitely required a huge paradigm shift, just because I worked in a certain model for such a long time that you think it's almost the only way. And as I mentioned before, you really do need to just forget everything you knew about advice and start from a clean slate and go, well, we're serving a completely different type of client now. What would work for a client like this with these particular issues? And I think when you start a business like we did with absolutely no clients, no revenue, nothing, you can tend to start off with more of a defensive mindset to go, well, I hope I don't lose this client. I hope we're not overcharging. What is our competitors doing? But over time, you see the amount of value you can add to clients. You start being really clear on who we serve, what are the problems we can solve, and how we can actually help these clients. And that makes pricing become a lot clearer because you are really clear on the value that you can add, and then you price accordingly.
Yeah.
So I think the pricing as well is a reflection of business design. So when you have a really clear model, then it makes it so much easier to scale later on. And it comes back to what we were talking about before, making these harder decisions up front so that later on the business can grow more seamlessly. If you do have a business where you have custom pricing for every single client, that just makes it really hard, not only to service, but to scale later on, because each client is essentially its own little business. It makes it very hard to streamline.
Yeah. There'd be no business that's ever picked their price from the beginning and not changed it.
Yeah.
There's no way you get that right first go. Yeah.
Oh, and I reckon in 6 months' time, I'll look back at the point I'm in now and laugh at myself because there'll be more changes to come. But it really is just a continual alignment of your pricing with the value and the service that you've created.
As you say, and it's a business model decision too, isn't it? Because you can think top down, you can think bottom up. People start at bottom up often. They'll go, well, what does it cost my time? But you've got to do it both directions, don't you? Say, what does it cost my
Yeah.
time and what's the value I can create? But it has to be top down as well to say, well, how many clients could we serve? What would that
Yeah.
look like? How many people does it support in our team that we need to support that client cohort? So yeah, it's a ever evolving thing for sure.
Yeah.
And you mentioned when we chatted earlier that roughly half your revenue is actually project based and half is ongoing in nature. What's your thinking on that mix and how do you think it'll evolve over time?
Yeah, I think that mix is also a function of the stage of business life cycle that we're in. So in the beginning, you're just trying to sign on a whole bunch of new clients. So I would say the first year was actually majority upfront. Now there is that mix where we're doing project versus upfront. So we do distinguish between those as well and then ongoing.
Yep.
We really like the option of having that project work. Given the type of millennial clients that we're trying to target, a lot of their needs can start off as a one-off. They may not want to feel like they need to commit ongoing for an indefinite period of time from the get-go, but there oftentimes is an issue that they're grappling with that they need clarity on. And so by having project work, we can provide that lower entry, barrier to entry for them to start out and then understand the value of having a professional look at their situation. And oftentimes we can upsell to an ongoing relationship. So that flexibility is really good. Other times it might be a one-off and then they come back a year later with another issue they might be grappling with. So having that flexibility is really beneficial for a business like ours and the type of clients that we serve.
Yeah, so it's distinctly different, as you said. There's like a,
Yeah.
a traditional client that might come in for a service where it's going to be an ongoing relationship, and you know that from the outset. You would have an upfront plan fee and then an ongoing service fee, but project fee is quite distinctly separate,
Yeah.
and that's like a defined piece of work for a fee,
Yes.
and that starts and finishes. And then, as you said, they might come back for another project down the line, or they may come at the back end of that project and think, well, actually, I really valued that process, and why don't we just continue? Would you then have incorporated an SOA in the project fee so they would then go straight to an ongoing arrangement at that point?
So the project work doesn't include the statement of advice. So that is
Okay.
distinctly separate. And then
Yep.
on the back of that project work, oftentimes they go, this has been a really great session. I got so much clarity from that. What's next? Then we go, well, your options are you can go and make that decision and you go ahead and do all the things that we've spoken about in terms of the guidance that we've provided. Or if you need specific advice as to exactly how much, what products, personalized advice, then we can actually help you implement that as well. Provide you the advice, implement it, and support you ongoing. And I often liken it to getting a workout plan. Some people go to the gym and they get a workout plan and they go off and they're happily doing it themselves. Other people, like me, need somebody to actually teach you how to do it, push you along, make sure you're kept accountable to the goals that you've set. And so that's the analogy we often use for these clients who come to us for project work. Well, it's flexible for you. Which one do you want to choose? And then we let them make that decision.
It's a good analogy. I think people can relate.
Yeah. Yeah.
You identified onboarding as an area that took real effort to get right.
Mhm.
What does your onboarding process look like now? And how much of a difference has it made to the day-to-day running of the business when you bring a new client on?
Yeah. Having done it quite a few times now, it's helped refine the process and make it really seamless. In the beginning, it was just meeting clients and then hoping that they sign a terms of engagement. Now we have a fairly structured onboarding so that every single new client who comes into our business has a similar experience, but still not miss out on that personalized touch. So our clients can book a meeting via our website or a booking link, and then they would get a 30-minute Teams chat with one of us or both of us. And then after that, we will send them the terms of engagement. We also offer another terms of engagement meeting if they would like to get more clarity on what that actually all means for them. And then once they sign the terms of engagement, we collect our commitment fee and then we start the work. So that part, our processes, our technology, our templated emails, we feel like we really nailed. And hopefully we can nail the rest of our processes in the same way.
Yeah, well, it's a good one to get down, isn't it? That front end process, that experience at the front end, to make sure that you're not burning a lot of time on people that really aren't going to be a fit or are not perhaps
Yeah.
suitable for the service. You're getting that initial phase done really seamlessly and
Yeah.
efficiently, so you're finding the right people taking them through a not significant acquisition cost process for you. It's a pretty streamlined process, and by the time you get to know a little bit about the situation, they engage and you've got them looking for that project work to be completed or the ongoing work, the upfront and ongoing work. And speaking of how you attract them, because obviously you've got a good process there once you do, you're generating thousands of views on Instagram. And this surprised me because I'm not of your generation. I have an Instagram account, I'll admit to that, but I'm not as familiar with it. And you're using minimal equipment, no production budget. But I saw your Instagram account after our initial chat. And it's really impressive to think that that's all really built into the app. It's a capability the app already has. What have you found actually works with this audience? And what do you think gets in the way for advisors like me who try to do something similar?
It really came from the fact that this is how I consume social media, as I use Instagram. And as I mentioned earlier, we created this business for ourselves. So I'm thinking, well, how would I engage with a professional service? I would look at their Instagram page to get a feel of what they're like. So if I'm trying to get a feel of what they're like, then I want to hear them talking. I want to hear them explaining concepts that I might be thinking about. And so I'm not concerned about the equipment or looking too fancy. I just want to be myself. And I think about the things that I say over and over again to the same client or the same people who ask me the same questions. And I just pick up my phone and record that same topic that I've been thinking about or been talking about. So in a certain week, I think I got 3 questions on novated leases. So I was like, I will make an Instagram reel on it, and that will help me reach a wider audience with that same video. So that's the philosophy behind it. And I think it can feel like a huge barrier sometimes to create a video. And in the beginning, I definitely felt that way, felt really self-conscious, looking at myself in the camera all the time. It is actually the most efficient way to get a message out there where you go, I'm saying this all the time anyway. If you're saying it all the time, you've got a pretty well-versed script on the things that you would explain about that concept. So why not just put it out there? Because a huge part of our vision is also education. So we want to make sure that our prospects, our clients are educated so that they have the confidence to make financial decisions. And so this strategy really aligns with that financial education part of it. And I'm happy to give out information for free because you can get this online anyway, right? But people want to be able to see someone that they trust talk about these topics. And that's kind of where it comes from.
Yeah, I can certainly relate to that. I mean, as you say, people want to see who it is they're going to be working with if they are.
Yeah.
And you say video is the best way to do that. Despite initially, as you say, starting out being self-conscious, you're doing a wonderful job at that. And it looks like you've done a lot of prep beforehand, but because you're becoming quite accustomed to doing it, you're actually not doing a whole lot of prep. You're already talking to people about these concepts. So it's really just putting the camera on and then really just talking to the camera. And they're not long videos, are they? They're like 1, 2 minutes.
I just kind of imagine that there's someone asking me an interview question like what we're doing now.
Yeah.
There's an interviewer and then I'm answering a question. So I think about the questions that I get asked a lot and then I go and answer that question. I film myself answering that question and that helps me talk about it in a succinct way.
We'll put your Instagram page in the show notes as a link for those that want to check it out. It's very cool. You did make the point when we were chatting earlier as well that people follow people, they don't follow companies. How do you think about balancing the strength of a personal brand that you're building by virtue of this process with building a business that has its own identity and doesn't rest entirely on you?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think I've made that comment in the context of social media because I always think about the people I follow and it's always people. I know the people that I'm following because I can relate to them and resonate with them. And so in the context of then building a business that's not entirely reliant on one person, which can be a risk for a small business where you have key person risk. So the business relies on that one person and their brand to continue growing. I think the personal brand is a great entry point to attracting people who want to understand what is it that you stand for? What is it that you believe in? What are your values? How do you communicate? And then when they've had that entry point via your personal brand, it's then giving them an experience that can be scalable and it's consistent across every aspect of the business. So then that removes that key person risk. That's the idea. I think you probably would have more experience than I do in this area, Rob, because you obviously have built a really strong brand for your business that's not reliant on you. But for me, that's probably the idea, that I want to build a strong personal brand. But then as we continue the business, Alicia and I, we ensure that all areas of the business, be it tech or branding or education, it's aligned to the things that we stand for as well.
Yeah, you did right. It does work just like that. As you say, it's an entry point because they connect with you personally and you're doing a wonderful job on attracting people. But as they get to experience the business of Game Plan Wealth Advisors and what you guys can deliver, that's the bit that makes them stay around and think this is the service I'm looking for. And you just happen to be the conduit initially to get them to come along. So,
Yeah.
And you started tracking your lead sources when we were talking about your technology. You said you're doing it through HubSpot. And you were weighing up because clean sheet business, you just looked at everything and you weighed up all options and you came down with HubSpot as being the best option for you. What do you expect the data that you collect through HubSpot about and the leads that you generate, what will it tell you? How might it shape where your focus and energy goes in terms of finding new clients from that information?
Yes, I should preface that we're fairly new to it as well. But as you mentioned, new business, we can start from scratch and we kind of looked at all the different options. We prefer to think of the tech stack as more of an organizational infrastructure as opposed to individual pieces of technology that we're putting together. So what is the best option for collecting client information and client data that gives us the lead generation and marketing information that we need? And HubSpot was probably the standout for us in that specific area. In terms of how it can collect information, it can track your website views, what pages people are clicking on. In terms of the client information, it shows up immediately, or what firm are they working for, their LinkedIn page, their social media pages, what links have they clicked on in the email communications that you've sent them. So that for us is important in terms of how we then curate marketing materials for the next time. And it just allows us to better segment our clients accordingly.
Okay, so tell me a bit more about that. So if someone reaches out to you and they give you their name and they give you their email.
Yes.
Does HubSpot have that sort of sophisticated way of then taking that information and going, this is where this person works? How much information does it share with you based on that preliminary data you might have on the client?
Yeah, so it depends. So if they put in a Gmail account, then we don't have much data to go with. We would just simply segment them out as a prospect who was interested in our email communications. But if they do have a domain name, it does show what company they work for, how they found us, whether they found us through the website or social media or anything else. Then that would give us some background information to their business if they have one.
So it'll tell you the channel.
Yeah.
Okay, great. That's super helpful, isn't it, in advance, knowing where they come from and
Yeah.
how they found you? Because how they found you is obviously super interesting to say, well, what was it that actually engaged them to reach out? And talking about technology, you made some, as I said, deliberate choices about the tools you would use.
Yeah.
You still use Xplan. It does a job for you. It has certain functions that you still use. HubSpot, the other, the CRM that we've now spoken about. What's the principle that you think about keeping these things separate? And what does that integrated setup look like as the business grows, do you think?
I think there's definitely trade-offs. So a lot of advice firms, they do tend to do a lot on one platform and then expect a lot, but then it does nothing quite right. And I kind of liken it to professional network. So build a professional network because you have people who are specialists in the areas that the client might need. And so you build that network because you know what you're good at, and you need to find people who then are also good at what they're doing, and then you can plug into each other and collaborate. And that's how I see technology as well. You want to find the best piece of technology for its use so that you're not constantly just trying to make something work that just doesn't fit, and then just being really clear on what is it that you actually need. Because technology is also expensive. Every time you subscribe to something and you introduce a new piece of technology, it requires training, staff training, client training. It requires your time to make it work for you. So it's just being really clear, ultimately starting with the end goal. What is it that we want to achieve, and what piece of a technology do we actually need to then support us to achieve that goal?
Yeah, so it starts out with the problem we're trying to solve for.
Yeah.
Then we'll look at the market and see what's available that is best of breed that solves that problem, overlaid with does it work nicely and seamlessly with other things we already use, trying to find that perfect combination of it solves the problem, it's best of breed, and it integrates nicely with other things that we currently use. Yeah.
Correct. And I think that the con is obviously you have a lot of pieces of technology to have to manage.
Yeah.
But the pro is that you can then have that flexibility. If something's not working for you, you can just take that piece out and replace it readily with another piece that might be better.
We first connected because we were using a common piece of technology back in, I was going to say like 2017, 2018
Yeah.
maybe. We first started speaking, and we've followed exactly the same ideology around technology that you have, which is to say find best of breed, make it all work together as best we can. But it was, as you say, deliberate because we didn't want to become dependent and reliant upon one piece of software, because if things didn't work quite right, we could actually just excise one piece and replace it with something else. And I liked that theory as well, and we've applied it ever since as well. So speaking of tech, let's talk about a couple of pieces that you're using. You use Claris for file notes, and you've spoken about how much it's changed the way you work.
Yeah.
Where else in the advice process do you think there's still room for technology to take some of the weight?
I think there's a lot that we could still be using to maximize it. And I'm not 100% there yet. Still an ever evolving journey like we are all on. I think there's huge potential in compliance and monitoring. So being able to flag things that, are upcoming or needs attention, automated data aggregation. So just being able to collect data for you on your behalf. Obviously, it can never replace the human judgment side of things, but what is it that is, low value friction areas that you can replace with the use of technology as opposed to bums on seats, having to actually do the work, maybe less consistently as well.
I know that data collection piece you just mentioned, using My Prosperity for that, for the onboarding and gathering that first piece of information about the clients. You flagged some limitations you've experienced, albeit you said it's certainly really useful for you and it's making some huge gains in terms of efficiency for that onboarding piece. How do you think about getting that consolidated view of a client who's a business owner, where you said it has a little bit limitation there around business clients at the moment? How do you think about getting that view of the client's consolidated position and what the current tools, My Prosperity and others, can deliver?
Yeah, that one's still a work in progress for us. So with My Prosperity, you can link data feeds into their cash accounts. But as you mentioned before, with our business clients, it does link all their business transactions, which distorts things a little bit. So My Prosperity is very much just for their personal assets, and we limit to that just to make things cleaner. So no, we haven't resolved that problem yet. But yeah, hopefully there'll be better solutions later on.
So you just say to the client, please don't connect your business accounts.
Or just have the surplus, put it into your personal account and keep it cleaner that way.
Yeah, for
Because
sure.
in the
Yeah.
beginning, when our business clients connected everything, it just created a big mess where they were like, I don't realize we spend that much. It's like, no, you don't. That's because it includes your employees' wages as well.
Yeah. Let's talk about the compliance one you just flagged there. I've seen a couple of different solutions in the market now that are doing SOA, sort of vetting, if you like, of an SOA after it's generated. Do you imagine a situation, this is something I've been thinking about for us as well, imagine a situation where inbound calls are recorded in and out, emails are obviously already captured in the CRM, and meetings are typically recorded, as people always do now, for file note purposes. Imagine you actually could train an AI tool to actually constantly be looking at the content of those conversations and saying, is there anything here that is not quite in line with the ASIC reg guides? Is there anything here that needs to be sort of picked up and some training being applied to someone who's perhaps not necessarily adhering to the standards we should all follow? And it's more often than not, I mean, as much as regulators may think otherwise, I think most of it's just simply people just aren't fully aware always. And it's a constant effort to try and give people that conscious training around how to make sure they stay in the guardrails. I don't know of anyone that's built such a thing, but that's kind of my sort of wish list one. And there are people that are doing some wonderful work about tracking all that information. And I spoke to Neil Kendall from Tuppercoffs on one of these episodes some months ago now, and he's tracking all inbound, outbound emails and phone calls and meetings and so on for the purposes of trying to find discrepancies that need to be picked up. But it's not specifically trained on AFSL regulations and Corp Chapter 7. So
Yeah, or the application of it.
yeah, that's right. I hope that's coming down the line. But in the meantime, I think people are doing some wonderful work around checking advice documentation in advance before it goes out to a client. I know there's a few providers out there. Have you looked at any specifically along these lines that you're thinking might provide a solution for you on the compliance tracking piece?
not sure about the compliance checking piece, but in terms of like developing the SOA, there's already Claude or Advice Designer looking into actually building the crux of that document for
Yeah.
you. And then you're just adding the personal touches to it. So we haven't integrated into our business yet because it's still quite new, and be interested to see how it all evolves in a couple of years' time.
Yeah, we're doing some pilot work ourselves at the moment, and it's certainly going to be a game changer if we can get that working. So, yeah, I think everyone's looking forward to that. Everyone knows the potential of it. It's just a matter of making it potential scalable and production ready, as
Yeah.
opposed to playing around on the side type ready, but actually genuinely production ready for high volume. So, yeah.
I think the file note has already helped a lot because it's
Yep.
actually helped capture a lot of the nuance that we often miss if we're just manually busy listening and then typing the notes. Because when I used to do that, it was just factual information that I put down that I might have missed a nuance that was actually really important to the conversation. So that's been really handy for us.
Yeah, it saved time and made us better.
Yeah,
So it's a
definitely.
win-win for sure. Now, something else you were very conscious of when you started out, and this surprised me when you told me this. Your dealer group was quite direct about you wanting to offer
Yeah,
insurance.
of
They said
course.
you should offer insurance. There's a young audience of clients. This is something they need. You should do it. You took a different view and you chose to form a business relationship with MBS Insurance. We also have a relationship with MBS, so I knew them well when you said that you'd done that as well. What was it about a referral arrangement with MBS that felt that it was a better path for you and Alicia to build a business around?
Yeah, that's a really good question. We thought about it for a really long time, especially everyone telling us with the cohort of clients that you're dealing with, they all need insurance. So why would you not do it? Well, the answer to that is because, once again, we want to specialize in what we're really, really good at. And we felt that insurance is definitely a specialty area, given the underwriting process and what happens when our client actually needs to claim. And you might think, well, younger clients, there might not be a lot of health issues yet, but that's actually a misconception. The first 3 clients had some pretty difficult health conditions that required a specialist to deal with that insurance process. So the first few clients that we signed on and they had their complications, we were like, it just reinforced exactly why we don't do it. There is still plenty of things that we do to support that. But given I've actually never done insurance before in my career in financial planning, and then Alicia hasn't either, we had to be clear on, from an ethical perspective as well, are we the best person to actually give advice on this area? And if it's no, then we should not be doing it.
Yeah, as you say, it's ethically sound choice you've made there, but also as a business choice to say, well, do we skill up and train in this area because we've not done it before ourselves? Or do we get a specialist firm that knows it inside out? As you say, the underwriting process can be quite challenging, not to mention the claims process. And so having a specialist work with clients that you collaborate with just means that the best person is serving that client. And there's still plenty of work to be done outside of working with the insurance for your young clients. So credit to you. You know, you've really set some very clear and conscious boundaries around what you will do and what you'll do really well, which means the clients no doubt are getting a wonderful experience as advised clients of your business game plan wealth advisors. So I think that's a real credit to you, because I was genuinely surprised when you said that,
Yeah.
that you actually didn't do insurance. I thought that was the go-to for everyone that started with young clients. They would do probably mortgage broking, they would do insurance work, and so that would be kind of how they would generate enough revenue to make it economic. But well done you.
Yeah, I think it definitely comes back once again to that long-term vision.
Yeah.
It is foregoing some short-term opportunities that might provide us with cash flow in the short term, but it's not what we want to be doing longer term, and recognizing that our specialization is not in those areas. And so sticking to what we think we can really add value on. And I think it's proven to be correct that there's still plenty for us to add value to the clients without having to do their insurance as well.
Yeah, terrific. And you're about 2 years in now. You are self-funding, so you're paying all the bills and there's money left over at the end of that process as well. Staying true to that original vision, as you look at the next phase of your growth as a business, where are you focusing your time and energy now when you're not seeing clients?
That's a good question. So I think it definitely comes back down to, for us, what's the long-term vision? How are we going to get there? It's really important that we continue to build a strong brand presence. So when I'm not working on the business, that's what I'm doing. Like thinking about our positioning, our communication, how we differentiate ourselves from competitors or similar financial planning firms out there, and just being able to get our message out there. So people are going to have a perception of your business, whether you like it or not. They either don't know it exists or they know it exists and have a perception of what you actually do. So it's really clear that we're proactive with that approach to go, well, if people are going to think about business, this is what we want them to think about when they think of game plan wealth advisors. So that's always something that we're thinking about when we're not working on clients. And the other thing that Alicia does spend a lot of time focusing on is that seamless experience through technology. How do we actually integrate these pieces to provide an excellent client experience that is consistent and also an enjoyable one as well?
Yeah, it's great. So it sounds like you've got different hats that you're wearing. So Alicia's
Yeah,
doing a bit
yeah,
more on the operations and
yeah,
workflows, and you're doing more of the front end marketing and engagement.
yeah.
And and I know that you're an excellence advisor. I know this because I've known you a long time. And it's amazing, isn't it, that there are such terrific advisors that do wonderful work, but it can be amazing as an advisor. But if you're not visible, you're not able to serve those clients unless you do put the time into that marketing and visibility. And Instagram,
Yeah,
that's your primary means of engaging with people that haven't met you before, that aren't coming by way of word of mouth. But of course, you're getting word of mouth like everyone else, because young
correct.
people hang out, they talk about this stuff and they would share what they're doing and you're getting referrals. But do you have a bit of a sense of the split between referrals and direct inquiries in terms of how much volume you're getting?
Yeah, it is interesting because I would also add that while social media is really important, I wouldn't consider it necessarily as they see one reel and then they book it in. It's actually a slow burn. So you might have announced that you started a business. So 2 years ago, announced that I started a business. People quickly forget that. They go, great job, you started a business. And then they quickly go, what business was that again? Whereas by putting out Instagram, something like a reel on Instagram or some information on Instagram, it's actually more about capturing the clients who actually are ideal clients, but they don't know it yet. But by watching the things that you're talking about, they're realizing, oh, actually, that's me. I need advice on those areas as well. Or this sounds exactly like my situation. So even though they might have been good prospects already, social media is actually about harvesting them and watering that potential over time. And it's just a more effective way of doing it instead of catching up with that person regularly for coffee, and not many people has time for that nowadays. You can actually just put out a post and then it can regularly capture those people who might have been interested from the beginning, but might not be the right time at that point in time. And as you said, it's just about visibility.
Yeah, visibility, staying front of mind, giving them content that actually is relevant to that audience. And the content, the beauty of it, doing video especially, it's very evergreen content, isn't it? Much of it is actually going to stand the test of time for at least a few years anyway, in terms of the type of material you're putting out there. So it's discoverable for people who, you might have done a video 3 years ago and someone picks it up and says, talking about novated leases, and now's the time for them. So you become the person they make contact with.
And it's a bit of a storefront for us as well. So someone might have found us from a different avenue, and then they go and research us a little bit. They find our social media. So they go and click on a few videos to watch to see what we're all about.
Yep.
And it gives them a feel as if they've already met with us as well. Because oftentimes the videos are in our office and they get a feeling of what it might be like to walk in there. Or they might see the way we talk and they're like, I feel pretty comfortable already before they actually walk in and disclose their whole financial position. We've had clients go, I already feel like I know you guys because they've watched a few of our videos.
Super powerful and very effective, isn't it, at building that engagement with people? So with your background and experience at all levels of a successful business, you've started your own now, but before that, you've obviously been at all levels of a very successful business. What surprised you about running your own business?
So many surprises, Rob, but
Start listing them, Beck. What have you got?
one of the biggest things that has surprised me is to actually get to a point where you become successful. A lot of it is not technical, it's psychological. So how can I actually ride through this period of uncertainty? And so that has been a really interesting shift from being an employee where your paycheck's basically certain. And there is that peace of mind knowing that, yep, you're going to be paid next. Whereas when you start out with nothing and you're exploring a new segment, well, what felt like a new segment to me because I hadn't really dealt with this younger cohort of clients before, and then going, is there actually a market for this? That was a big jump in the first instance. And then ongoing, it's like continually testing yourself and stretching yourself. But the best thing as well, another really nice surprise, is how many people out there who are willing to help. And the professional network, our industry is just such a great industry because everyone has kind of been through it and they're so willing to support us. And that's been a really nice surprise.
Yeah. It's wonderfully challenging, isn't it? It's sort of always dealing with new problems all the time, but you feel like it's a creative pursuit and something you really can put all your energy and time into. And I really love that point you just made there, Beck. I just want to double click on it. You said there it's a psychological thing as much as anything, because we all crave certainty to some extent in our lives, and naturally starting a business doesn't bring any degree of certainty, certainly in the beginning. But I was listening to a podcast recently. Do you listen to The Diary of a CEO?
Yes, of course, Steve Bartlett. Yep.
Yeah, I know you're a great listener and reader like I am. He was interviewing, I think his name's Professor Scott Galloway, and he was talking about what has made him successful. And he said, with a bit of profanity laced in there, he said, I've been kicked to the curb more than once in terms of making decisions that didn't work out.
Yeah.
He said, and I mourn for a little bit and I get up and I just keep on going. And I really like that framing. And you just said it as well in a different way, which is it's a psychological experience of saying, I'm not going to get this right all the time.
Yeah.
It's not going to be perfect all the time, but with that resilience to look past the short term. And, there's days where you think, oh, this is so hard. Things could be like really, sometimes things don't go to plan. But if the next day you wake up and think, okay, I'll figure it out and move on, that's how people build great enterprises. And I really do wish you and Alicia very well. I know you'll do well. I know the background and your experience and just what you bring to the table in terms of the skill set. And just the engagement you bring when you talk to clients, I'm sure is just terrific. And your Instagram channel backs that up in spades. So it's great to reconnect. We hadn't spoken for a few years, but I knew you were doing this work in this space. And we ourselves have been thinking, how do we serve this younger audience? So I'm going to reach out to someone who knows because she's doing it. So I really appreciate you joining me today on the Trusted Advisor podcast.
Thanks so much, Rob.
We finished our episode chat, but then we've chatted since I hung up and thought there's more here we should cover. Let's go back to the tissue box, because you said you initially looked at marketing and you got a marketing agency in and they were going to do this big production episode, going to call this content for you, $2,500 a month. And you went, oh, it doesn't feel like me if we do it like this. And you've got a tissue box that uses a stand for your phone. Tell me about what was that decision around being so authentic and making sure that the way you put your content out there felt real.
Yeah, I think for us, it was really about aligning our marketing shopfront with who we really are. We didn't want a separate persona on who we put out in Instagram or social media compared to who people actually met when they saw us in person. So it was really important to me that everything I said or how I talk is exactly how I talk in real life. And so I just felt more comfortable. I know there's marketing agencies that will film a very high production video for you regularly and use all their professional equipment. But I just felt more comfortable picking up a phone and speaking like I do to a normal client when I meet them face to face.
And something else I discovered when I was doing a bit of background research before our episode, I found a quote that you have, I think it's on LinkedIn or on your website, I can't remember which, but it was, some people are so poor, all they have is money. So tell me about where that quote came from and why was it important to you to say that to the people looking for you as their advisor?
Yeah, so I actually have that quote hung up on my childhood bedroom to this day. My parents haven't taken it down. And I think it has stemmed from the money belief in how my parents raised me. So my parents came in 1980s from Hong Kong, and they always said that they could have earned a lot more back in Hong Kong in a career-driven city than they did in Australia, but they made an intentional choice to provide us, my brother and I, a better life. Like, we were born here and raised here, and they felt that this was a lot more aligned with their values, Australian values. So it was really instilled in me that money you can always earn back, but there are certain things that once you lose it, you can never gain back. And it's very similar to your philosophy. And I love your name, HPH Solutions, which stands for health, prosperity, and happiness, because those are the three areas that my mum always said, these are things that money cannot buy. And you can have all the money in the world and you can maximize every dollar. But if you lose those three areas, then it's gone. And so that's how I approach financial advice. If we're thinking about financial advice, it's not about maximizing your net worth and maximizing every dollar, because that really does influence the way you provide advice. It's about understanding what is most important to you, what are your values and priorities, and making sure that we see money as a tool to help you achieve those goals. So sometimes it might be giving clients permission to spend more time with the family and work less. Sometimes it might be understanding that you can actually take more regular holidays and recoup, as opposed to just working all the time and accumulating, because you can get into that mindset that it can be very hard to shift later on.
Yeah. What great parenting.
Yeah.
For your parents, I mean, sincerely, I think to actually have instilled that value in you early about the importance of living your life well as opposed to pursuing money as
Yeah.
an end rather than the means. So, yeah, I love that. And it genuinely is a great gift they gave you for you to actually have picked that up so early in life and have it in your childhood bedroom wall and still be hanging there. You've long since moved out, but it's still hanging there on the wall.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's a very meaningful quote to me. She instilled that before she ever knew I wanted to do financial planning. It was nothing to do with financial planning. It's a life value.
Yeah, fantastic. What else is going on in your world that you think is worth sharing? Because when we were initially trying to connect, you were driving all over the place. You're a young mum. You've got kids doing sport and doing different things. So what does life look like running a business now, being a young mum, taking care of your kids, your family, as you do, turning up at sports events, being
Yeah.
there as well as trying to run a business? What does that look like?
Yeah, I think that this very much aligns to what I was saying about myself before. When we made the decision to start a business, well, it wasn't necessarily a financial one. You're taking this huge risk to walk into uncertainty. But while my kids are young, so they're 10 and 8, wanting to be there for them, having control over my own schedule and time, then this decision really aligns with that overall vision that I have for my life. So, I don't believe necessarily in work-life balance. I think that that's very hard to achieve, but work-life integration is probably the closest we can get.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of that because you've made a conscious choice again to say, how would I want my life to look to be able to be as flexible and give as much to the business as I can, but also without sacrificing family
Yeah,
in the meantime. So congratulations again to you and to Alicia to
thank you.
starting your business. And I wish you nothing but great success because I'm sure it'll come, but I look forward to following your journey. And thanks again, Beck, for joining me on the Trusted Advisor podcast.
Thanks, Rob.
Thanks for tuning into the Trusted Advisor. I hope today's conversation brought you new insights and inspiration for growing your business. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe on your favourite podcast platform, leave a review and share it with others in the industry. And don't forget to connect with us on LinkedIn for updates on future episodes. Until next time, keep building trust, embracing innovation and driving success in your practice.